We're in the all-new Mazda 3. The model we're in is a sedan and is equipped with a manual transmission, and we're going to do a fuel economy test to see how well it performs. As you can see right now, I have a full tank of fuel, and on this full tank, my fuel range is estimated to be 530 kilometers before I run completely out of fuel. You'll also notice I have my trip meter on the screen here, and it currently reads 0. Same with my second trip meter as well. We're going to be driving this over the week and see how many kilometers we complete, and after that we'll head to the gas station to see how much it costs to fill up, so stay tuned. So let's do a highway fuel economy test on the Mazda 3. So you'll notice right now, we're driving at speeds between 80 and 120 kilometers an hour, which I consider highway speeds. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually see what the lowest fuel economy we can achieve is. And this will give us an idea of how low we can expect our fuel economy to go. And this is based on my driving. Now, the reason that we drove this over several kilometers in order to get that highway fuel economy number is because you need to average out the fuel economy as you drive. You know, you can't just start off, drive 2-3 kilometers and say, yep, I've tested the highway fuel economy of this, because for all you know, a lot of those 1 or 2 kilometers that you did was probably uphill or probably downhill. So it's important to average it out over several kilometers, probably 10 kilometers, in order to get an idea of what your average fuel economy was in the span of those 10 kilometers. Also worth mentioning is that this is our running fuel economy that we're testing. It's not from a complete standstill, so keep that in mind, that the vehicle was in motion when we first started and no braking was applied, nor was any throttle applied in order to get the vehicle to its current approximate speed from a standstill. But now that we've completed the test, you'll notice that we've averaged out at around 4.7 liters per 100 kilometers to around 4.8 liters per 100 kilometers, which is really good for this class and this category of vehicle. 171.5 kilometers later, and the fuel needle is still on the full line. We just spent the week testing the Mazda 3, and we have some numbers here we'd like to share with you. As you can see, we have slightly more than a half tank of fuel left, and so far we've driven a total of 378.3 kilometers. Our average fuel economy, according to the vehicle, is rated at 7.1 liters per 100 kilometers, and we have a remaining fuel range of 300 kilometers. My driving conditions have been pretty basic. I haven't had the air conditioning or the heating on at all, but I have had the sound system on the whole time. Also worth mentioning is I did around 60% of my driving in the city and 40% on the highway, just to give you an idea of how I got the numbers that I did. As you can see, we're at the fuel station right now and we're going to fill it back up, and based on that we'll do some calculations to get a better idea of how much you can actually expect to spend on a full tank of fuel, as well as your actual fuel economy based on my driving. So we spent $31.14 to fill up 25.7 liters of fuel at a fuel cost of $1.209 per liter. As you just saw, we spent $31.14 to fill up 25.7 liters of fuel at a fuel cost of $1.209 per liter. Also worth noting is the fuel capacity of the Mazda 3 is 50 liters or 13.2 gallons. What we're going to do now is we'll calculate our kilometers per liter number to get an idea of how many kilometers you can travel on every liter of fuel. To do that, we'll take the 378.4 kilometers that we've driven so far and divide it by the 25.7 liters of fuel that we filled up. So 378.4 kilometers divided by 25.7 liters gives us 14.7 kilometers per liter. That means on every liter of fuel, you can expect 14.7 kilometers of driving. Now what we're going to do is we'll calculate our actual fuel range based on my driving. To do that, we'll take the 14.7 kilometers per liter number that we achieved and multiply it by the fuel capacity, which is 50 liters. So 14.7 kilometers per liter multiplied by 50 liters gives us 735 kilometers. That means on a full tank of fuel, based on my driving, you can expect 735 kilometers of driving. What we're going to do now is we'll calculate our cost per kilometer. To do that, we'll take the $31.14 that we filled up for and divide it by the 378.4 kilometers that we drove. So $31.14 divided by 378.4 kilometers gives us 0.08. That means every kilometer in the Mazda 3 costs us 8 cents Canadian. And finally, let's calculate the cost of a full tank of fuel. First, let's do it for Toronto, Canada, where the fuel price is $1.209 per liter. So $1.209 per liter multiplied by the Mazda 3's fuel capacity, which is 50 liters, gives us $60.45 Canadian. That means a full tank of fuel, if you were to fill up in Toronto, Canada, would cost you $60.45. Now let's cross the border into Detroit, USA, where the fuel price is $2.30 per gallon. So $2.30 per gallon multiplied by the Mazda 3's fuel capacity, which is 13.2 gallons, gives us $30.36 US. That means a full tank of fuel, if you were to fill up in Detroit, USA, would cost you $30.36 US.